1 Samuel 31, 4, 6. Saul's suicide. All right. This one's going to be easy to explain. This is all it's going to say. It's talking about the Philistines killing Saul, and then it talks about Saul killing himself. Well, if you look at the battle and you understand the book that you're reading, you will see that Saul was already going to die. He was already sore wounded, okay? The only reason he ran himself through with a sword is because he didn't want to be alive and let them torture him, okay? He was already dead. And besides, he was told the day before by Samuel's ghost that showed up when he was she conjured up, the witch at Endor conjured him up, and God allowed Samuel to appear to Saul, and bam, he told him, thou and thy son shall be with me tomorrow. Okay, so Saul was already told he was going to die. Now, why he went to battle with the Philistines after that? Well, that just shows the rebellious nature of Saul. Because he was like that, all the way back at the beginning, right after he was made king, he started rebelling against God. He stopped listening to him, and yet he sought him out to get counsel from him, which didn't make any sense to me. All right, Samuel 31, 4, 6. I know I've already explained this, but I'm going to read it anyway. Then said Saul unto his armor-bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid that Saul took his sword and fell upon it. Now, why was his armor-bearer afraid? Well, because Saul was still the anointed of God. That's why David didn't kill him, okay? But Saul was told he was going to die, and he was going to die in the battle with the Philistines. So, like I said, he was already sore wounded, so he was already going to die. Now, does it matter that it says here in the other book, or in 2 Samuel 21:12? I'm just going to read it to you. Second Samuel 21:12. And David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of Jonathan his son from the men of Jabesh Gilead, which had stolen them from the street of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hanged him, when the Philistines had slain Saul in Gilboa. Okay? Now, obviously, it's talking about the Philistines defeating him in battle and having him killed. He was dead. Okay? Now, that doesn't actually mean that the Philistines actually physically went over there and then took the last breath out of him. All right? It says David killed Uriah by the sword of the Philistines. Okay? So could I say that the Philistines killed Uriah? Yeah. Could I say that David killed Uriah? Yes, I can. Could I say that Joab killed Uriah? Yeah, because Joab is the one that set him into the heat of the battle and then withdrew the troops. Okay? So, but did Joab actually stab him? No. Okay? But the Philistines did actually shoot Saul with arrows, and he was sore wounded that he was going to die. So, yeah, they actually did kill him. Okay? So no matter which way you look at this, biblically speaking, there are other parts of the Bible that show that this is an accurate description of how God would describe someone being killed by someone else. So to say that the Philistines killed Saul is accurate, and to say that Saul killed Saul is also accurate. There is no contradiction, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one here. This is number 11. I got one more after this. 2 Kings 25:8. We're almost done here. All right, it says, in the 5th month of the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th day of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came into Zaradin, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. Okay, now the difference here it's going to be talking about, and again, I'm going to go back to this. You have to understand to look at the wording. The wording matters, okay? So I'm going to read this to you again. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. Now keep that word in mind. I'm going to go to the other page here. Jeremiah 52:12. So he came unto Jerusalem, 52:12. Now we're going over Jeremiah 52:12. This is very easily misunderstood when you don't look at the words and understand these prepositions meaning, the meaning of these prepositions. Okay? Unto something is different than this verse over here, which says into. Okay? So, again, not a contradiction. But we'll go ahead and go here just so I can go ahead and show you what it's saying. 52:12. All right. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day. Now the other book said the 7th day. This says the 10th. Okay. So there's the contradiction. All right. It says, which was the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, which served the king of Babylon, into Jerusalem. So that means he showed up on the 7th day, and he camped outside of Jerusalem for 3 days, and then he went in. Now, does that seem that hard to understand? Not really, okay? So he showed up, okay, on the 7th, and he went into it on the 10th. That's all it is. This is not hard, all right? We go to the last one. This is 1 Kings 4:26. You want a hard one, go ahead and look up why it says that David received from Gad, right? He gave the offer of 7 years of famine in one book, which was, I think it's 2 Samuel 24, chapter 24. And then the other one is in 1 Chronicles chapter 21. He offers him 3 years. You want to know the answer to that one? That one's a lot harder to understand because you got to go back through and read why they would do that. And one is actually giving a quote of Gad, and the other one is just describing what he offered. So, again, I could show you that one, but you go ahead and look it up yourself if you want. 1 Kings 4:26 here. And this is the same thing with David and the 7,000 horsemen and 700 horsemen. This one actually gives you a lot more definition, or gives you more context. So it's even more easily seen, okay? So 4:26, 1 Kings. And Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots and 12,000 horsemen. Okay, now I'm going to read this again because it's going to be hard to understand if you don't get this full understanding of this verse. It's so short. Okay? All right, here we go again. All right, 4:26, it says, and Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots. Okay? So he had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots. Okay? You understand this? Now I'm going to go to the other book. And like I said, the wording matters. All right? Go to the other book again. All right. This is 2 Chronicles 9:25. It says, and Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots. So that means he had 40,000 stalls for horses, right? 4 chariots. And then he says he has 40,000 stalls for horses and chariots. So you see the difference? He's got 40,000 stalls for horses only that are for his chariots. So the horses are for the chariots, right? And then he has 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots. Meaning he has stalls where you could put a horse and a chariot at the same time. Wording matters, okay? So that's the difference here. There's no contradiction, all right? You have to understand the wording matters, all right? Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you this one because this is such a great one. If you're looking for a contradiction in the Bible and you saw this one, you're going to be like, oh, this is it. Because if you want to believe the Bible is wrong, guess what you're going to find? Do I need to tell you? You're going to find contradictions. It's not that hard. There are no contradictions. If you want to believe God's word is wrong, you're going to find contradictions because he's not going to show you the truth. God requires faith first, people. If you won't give him your faith, he's not showing you anything. Do you not think God can keep a book together, for crying out loud? He created the whole universe. He can't keep a book together. There's not much of a God, is he? We're going to 2 Samuel 24. I'm going to read you this. Or not, it's for, yeah, okay. Here we go. It says, and again the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he moved David against them to number the people. All right, and this was to number Israel and Judah. All right, now down here, because David had sinned, his sin was pride, and I made another video on this. I'm not going to go through that; it's take too long. But I'm going to go down here to what Gad offered him. Okay. Now Gad, because David had sinned by numbering the people, he says sin was pride. All right, because he was putting his strength in the arms of Israel. Okay, he numbered the people so he could measure his own strength. Now, Israel was falling away from the Lord at this point, and the wrath of God was kindled against them. So what he did is he numbered the people. Instead of going to God and his strength being the Lord, his strength was going to be in the number of the mighty men and the number of the men of war of Israel. And he was like a miser counting his money, to measure his strength. And that's what was the abomination of Joab here. So Gad came unto David and told him, and said unto him, shall 7 years of famine come unto thee in thy land, or wilt thou flee 3 months before thine enemies while they pursue thee, or that there be 3 years of pestilence in the land? Okay, so what is he offering? He's offering this here. He's offering 7 years of famine, all right? 3 months of David fleeing from his enemies, okay? Or he's offering 3 days of pestilence. Okay, and this is from 2 Samuel 24, all right? Now, I want to make a point here as you're looking at this, all right? Because you have to understand, like when Jesus Christ says, show me a penny, or he says, give me a piece of money in 2 different Gospels, that's still saying the same thing, because one is actually quoting him, and the other is describing what he said. So it does not change that that's what he said. It's just one is a quote, and the other one is describing what he said, okay? Now, when I go over to here, all right, and this is the same thing, all right? So Gad came to David and told him and said unto him, shall 7 years of famine come into thee in thy land? And it's a question, all right? So this is a quote of what Gad said. He's offering this. He's quoting. This is what he's quoting. So Gad is quoting this as his exact question to David. Shall there be 7 years of famine unto thee in thy land? Okay. Now let's go over to 1 Chronicles 21. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. It's got the exact same story. And here it is. And it says, and Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. Okay, obviously this is Satan doing it by using the kingdoms around Israel to provoke David to number his people, to measure his own strength. Okay. Now, it says that Gad again, here it says he came to see him because God was displeased with the thing, right? So here we go. Offer these 3 things, all right? So Gad came to David and said unto him, thus saith the Lord, choose thee either 3 years famine, or 3 months of being destroyed before thy foes, while the sword of thine enemies overtaketh thee, or else 3 days of the sword of the Lord, even the pestilence. Okay, so here it's saying the last 2 things are the same, but the first one is 3 years of famine. Now, how is that possible? When you say, well, how can 7 years over here equal 3 years over there? Let's go to 2 Samuel 21 and let's find out. And this is why the quote actually means something. All right. Now it says, then there was famine in the days of David 3 years. This is because of Saul and the house of Saul slaughtering the Gibeonites. And like I was telling you earlier in the video, it talks about how the 7 sons of Saul were given unto the Gibeonites as a repayment of that blood debt. All right. Now the only son that was of the house of Saul that was left was Mephibosheth, and not Mephibosheth of Saul, meaning his father. It was the son of Jonathan. And this because there was a vow before God. This is a pact that David and Jonathan had together, and he kept Mephibosheth, okay? And Mephibosheth was lame because he fell and he broke his foot when he was younger. But I'm not going to get deep into that story here, but let's just go with this. There was 3 years of famine in the land. Now this is 2 Samuel chapter 21. Now, 2 Samuel chapter 24, all right, that's 3 chapters later, is where David commits this sin, all right? Well, you're saying, well, that's only 6 years, all right? Gad didn't come to see David until after the people were numbered. And it took 9 months and 20 days. Now, it says over here that the famine, when this happened, it was at the time of the harvest. So that means there was 3 harvests already passed, and now we're at this harvest, and the 3 years, there's already 3 years of famine, okay? So there's going to be another year of famine because it isn't over yet until the next harvest. So that's another full year till the next harvest. So 9 months and 20 days in, here comes Gad, and he says what? He says, shall there be 7 years of famine in thy land? That's why the quote matters. That's why you need to believe God, and that's why you need to read the King James Bible. You got it? 7 years of famine versus 3. Both books are correct. Thank you for your time. You have a good day.